Welcome to Shielded, the podcast dedicated to helping Florida's first responders understand the laws that affect their work and their lives. We bring clear answers, practical tips, and stories to help you when you need it most. If you're a first responder in Florida, this is your playbook. Be sure to check out all of our resources at bicklerlaw.com. I'm your host, Paolo Longo, and I'm here with my partner, Geoff Bickler. At Bickler & Longo, this is what we do. Now let's get into it. All right. Welcome back to Shielded, the first responder podcast. I'm your host, Paolo Longo, along with my partner, as always, Geoff Bickler. Today is a special day for us. We are honored to welcome a special guest, a former police officer with the Orlando Police Department who, in the wake of the tragic events at the Pulse Nightclub shooting back in 2016, responded as a member on the hazmat team recovering victims of that event. Over the course of his service, he started in the force around 2004, found his and his family's life profoundly changed in the aftermath of that night. Ultimately diagnosed with PTSD during his experiences that night, he's become a bit of a focal point in the discussion around first responder mental health, how it pertains to workers' compensation, and also institutional support for our first responders who have these kind of invisible wounds. In his journey together with his wife, Jessica, they've helped really shine a light on this gap that we have and that we had, but we still have, between mental health injuries and institutional sort of recognition. What I think makes this man especially compelling for our conversation on this topic today is he kind of lives in this intersection of frontline service, trauma, recovery, and ultimately advocacy. So I would like to welcome not only one of our clients, but my friend, Gerry Realin. Gerry, welcome to the show, my man.
Hey, it's good to see y'all. Talk to you as always. I'm glad to be here to do this, but I'm just glad to be here, able to do this, because if you had asked me to do this, I don't know, 8 years ago, 6 years ago, 5 years ago, probably couldn't, but so I'm glad to be here. Yeah.
Well, we're happy too, Gerry, that you're here. We've had several conversations over the years about doing something like this, and it was always a hard no. So I'm glad that you're here. And so, if you don't mind, let's just get into it. So take us back, around that time. What do you remember most? What was going on? And I'll let you have the floor.
Yeah. Well, what do I remember most? Let's consider the victims died around 2 a.m. Right? And I didn't leave there. They were still there, and I didn't leave there till almost midnight the following night. So just, wow. If you were to take a guess, I'll give like a few seconds for listeners to take a guess what I would remember the most. It was horrific. So without detail or specifics, what I remember the most was the faces, horrific faces, horrific bodies, the smell. Remember, they were there for a long time. I was there for a long time. The heat, I probably sweated every ounce of fluid I had in me. Me and my whole team did, in those suits, and hardly any hydration for hours. So all that, obviously, a lot of blood, red, and just how long I was there. It seemed like forever.
Yeah, I can imagine. I mean, 12 or 15 hours seems like an eternity.
And Gerry, you said it was so hot. I mean, that was also something that was of great interest, at the beginning of your case, that the electricity had been cut to the facility, right? So there was no electricity in the building. There was no running AC. I mean, can you describe that a little bit more?
There was no AC. I can't even tell you if doors were open for air to flow through. We didn't have oxygen tanks on us. We had them, but even if we used them, we would have run out. Each tank's what, 45 minutes if you're a trained breather, but yeah, we didn't have that. And
Right.
hydration, food, or anything, we didn't have that. We were just us.
Well, and Jerry, I mean, listen, so, I mean, it's really interesting because it was such an unprecedented event, just in terms of the way it went down. But you guys, I mean, you weren't getting any relief in there, right? I mean, you weren't getting people coming in and giving you opportunities to get a break from the space. I mean, can you talk a little bit more about that too?
Yeah, we had no relief. We're exhausted in all ways, physically, mentally. We're tired. We were like, are we getting relief? Do we got backup? Are we getting changed out? And then I remember I was the one who said, listen, it's too late for us, right? No one else needs to see this. This is bad. I said, let's just finish it. Let it just be us, because it's too late. I mean, let's just.
How many hours in was that, Barry? I mean, yeah, you're literally like 18 hours or whatever it is in this space, right?
This was after 4 hours of physically wrapping, moving, lifting, and carrying them out. Barely able to walk, Towards the end, it took more than just two of us per victim. Be like, man, can the two of y'all get that end? Two of us will get this end. We're almost done, right? We had no relief.
No.
But after so long, we were wondering, nobody else needs to come here and get, change for life.
Right. And once you got, I mean, we've spent hours talking about this over the years. Once you got through that night and the next few days, how did you start to transform, and when did you start to notice, hey, something is not clicking right with myself in your own sort of shell? When did you start to notice?
Well, I'm going to probably mention this a couple times as we discuss, but we all just went back to work, right? Full normal duty after that. So when did I start to notice? I didn't. Like, not directly.
You don't even, by the time you notice, it's been a long time, right?
Well, here's how I noticed, right? My wife did. Others did. What I can equate to realizing or noticing would probably be more like going through, what I experienced. And I was suffering, right? And in terms of like nightmares, flashbacks, I couldn't sleep. I didn't want to sleep, right? Because of the nightmares. So my wife remembers me just screaming if I did fall asleep at night. She remembers me screaming in the middle of the day. I was cutting the grass and it was so hot. I was sweating. Remember the heat? I mentioned the heat, right? She said I was seeing things. Like, I forgot what I was doing. I started seeing things and I was screaming. I remember the heat and sweating, and it took me back to the heat and sweating. So it's like a somatic memory, a physical thing, heat and sweating, giving me a memory trigger, physical to a mental memory trigger. And she said that, and I was like, what? And then she had to ground me. I can't remember. She came out and be like, what's going on? And when she did that, I was like, back to my yard. But I was hot. She brought me something to drink. But yeah. So did I realize, or did I kind of just, I was going through it, and my wife was the one noticing.
Yeah. Was there was there something with you personally that said, okay, or that moment where you said, something's not right. I've got to do something.
I mean, I was going through a lot. Like I said, these symptoms were coming out, and me just, because I went right back to work, 911 calls, making arrests. Meanwhile, yeah, I was emotionally, I couldn't get off my mind. I felt I was depressed. I was tired, exhausted, and I was really just, I guess, traumatized. I was getting these visuals, and it was so wrong. I was mad. I was sad. I could feel like there was something wrong, but this was new to me. So I didn't know what was going on.
Was there any kind of departmental or institutional sort of help at that point?
Well,
Or was it even a conversation?
well, before I go to that, back to like how things were, I remember saying, to my wife or someone, like, if ever I go silent or weep for no reason or seem to leave you, even if you're right beside me, remember one word and you'll know exactly where I am. Pulse. And that's how it was. But as far as the conversation, again, everyone just went back to work, right? The department, the city, they were not ready. They were not prepared for this, something so severe in such a wide scale. The reaction was inadequate. It fell back on, hey, there's EAP available. EAP's Employee Assistance Program, you need it. But we're talking about for hundreds, if not thousands, of people, because if you include spouses, families, the victims, all interagencies, they were just not prepared. And if you did that, you couldn't get a guarantee you were getting a trained therapist. Like, you could have been getting a marriage counselor who didn't know anything about first responder trauma.
Well, isn't that almost always the case, Jerry? I mean, the EAP providers in many instances have no background in treating first responders for these types of issues, right? So it's
Exactly.
Right.
a really critical.
It's different from. I mean, I hurt my knee, right? I got an orthopedic surgeon, and then I got physical therapists for that. That's, it's not like I hurt my knee and got a cardiologist and then a different kind of therapist. It's specific. So for this, you weren't getting the specific help you needed from the specifically trained therapist. You weren't even getting a doctor, and it affected so many and some severe, right? And we all just went back to work, and this was the only thing they had. EAP.
And Jerry, there wasn't any kind of like debriefing for you or anything like that? I mean, after you witnessed all of this, and they just sent you home, right? I mean,
They
was
just
there
sent us home.
anything that was?
Yeah, they just sent us home. Those who had to go back to work went back to work. There was a debriefing for an hour or two, maybe, and that conversation actually, back to the conversation, it's like, talk about it, right? Well, that isn't always the best thing to do. And we learn that in this.
Right.
So, this trauma is so fresh, it's real. You're thinking about it, even when you don't want to think about it. And I learned later that talking about it, like they say, which was commonly said after, was not the answer for many, because you're just reliving it over and over, re-traumatizing yourself. But in those debriefings, we learned that one debriefing, that was it. If you made it, you made it. You could have been working, you couldn't go.
Yeah.
Right. And Jerry, when you when you finally, came to the decision, right, to say, I need help, I'm going to seek help, I'm going to file a claim, right? What was that process like for you, just generally? Walk us through that.
Well, I can't say at first, I can't say I just decided, right? I was going through a lot.
Yeah, I think somebody made that decision for you.
And I was going through a lot. I was still trying to recognize, man, this is different, you know?
Yeah.
I was experiencing a lot, having the symptoms. It was rough. I wasn't, like I said, I wasn't even aware of some of the things going on. My wife's the one who noticed more. She's like, something's wrong, you should see somebody, see a doctor, get some help. I'm like, yeah.
She really became your champion in this whole thing, right,
We
Gerry? I
did.
mean, she became not only your champion, but really a champion of this.
Yeah, for many. So yeah, so she's telling me this, and remember, I'm back to work, and one night I'm working overtime at night, and I was just crying, thinking about it. It's like tragic. It's horrific. I was exhausted. I wasn't sleeping for about 2 weeks or so, right? So I called this hotline. It was a number the department had put out. I called it. Well, let's say, right, they're supposed to be anonymous, right? I called it.
Yeah.
I was expressing my emotions. It was just horrible. The person who answered the hotline, I think they were actually employed by the department, but nevertheless, she realized it was bad. You know, I say, if it was like triage, they realized, yeah, your knee's broken, dude. But here, the hotline person was like, yeah, this is bad. Anyways, next day, again, my wife's telling me I should see someone. Next day after that night, I get a call. I'm off. I get a call from my lieutenant. And she's like, listen, I'm ordering you. Go to Centricare, right? So Centricare is like urgent care below emergency room. And man, let me tell you,
Yeah, it's like a walk-in clinic. A walk-in clinic.
here's where we begin to identify, yeah, they're not ready. This is unprepared for this type thing because
Unreal.
I go to Centricare and they're the contracted, all the emergency rooms and then Centricare itself is contracted by the city for our injuries, right? You get hurt. They didn't want to treat me. They didn't want to treat me. I'm like, listen, I was told to come here. I'm explaining my symptoms, what happened. And they're like, we don't treat this. So I report back to my lieutenant. Eventually, somehow I got through to risk management and they called Centricare. And now I'm okay. So whatever that conversation was, they took me back and the doctor, he's like, I'm taking you off work, man. This could be long-term, lifelong, permanent, and be just permanent. So, so then he's, I'm taking you off work, I wasn't too familiar then with PTSD. Again, it wasn't covered much in the academy, wasn't covered much field training, not covered in annual block training. And I'm got over, I don't know what 12 years on now. Yeah. Not covered much. But he took me off, so my symptoms came forward, decided for me. The doctor decided for me. So I had no choice. That's how I guess decided.
Right. And speaking of your wife, Jessica, I mean, she ultimately turned into a one-man army, right? For not only for you, but for first responders in general. I mean, as a whole, to fight for this because
she stood when when many couldn't, for all of us, and she was like the strength.
Yeah.
And with her, and my doctor, therapist, and y'all as my legal help. And then we had top media voices, local and abroad, kind of like just all
Right.
together, and she was spearheading it. I knew she was
Well,
going to. I knew
Well,
she.
Gerry, I mean, I think, it's important to point out, right? Like, your case basically highlighted a legal issue that we had in the system, and they denied your claim, right? Which was incomprehensible to a lot of us. And do you remember like that moment that you realized, hey, they're not going to take care of my workers' compensation case here? I mean,
Let me tell you, I felt confused. I felt
right,
I felt rejected.
right,
If I wasn't already feeling defeated from suffering from my symptoms and stuff, I definitely felt defeated then, right? And cheated. I was sad, mad. I felt abandoned. I mean, I did not understand. I'd been injured before.
yeah,
Broke my knee, sprained my back being thrown through a wall, cracked my knee fighting a burglar in a stairwell. It was like boom, boom, boom. Orthopedic, do physical therapy. I was getting paid if I missed work, no problem. I'm like, I responded. I came off vacation to help my team.
Right. And just so we're to clarify, right? Ultimately you were getting your medical, right? They were
Right.
providing the doctor, but it was the wage loss that wasn't getting, because obviously once you got taken out of work, right, then now you're not getting paid.
That's what
Okay.
that's
And
what
so,
that really hurt and stressed me out, and it freaked me out because wait a second. The doctor took me off work, right? Their doctor, they sent me. It's in the system. It's their doctor. I never picked my doctor, right? Their doctor.
right.
You said, man, I'm taking you off work. Now I'm realizing, wait. This problem, this injury, I'm not going to get paid. It was, that's
It's
unacceptable.
incomprehensible.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, that was really the point, Gerry, like wanting to get into that discussion a little bit, because I think for lay people just looking at this issue, they would never anticipate that you wouldn't be protected, your wages wouldn't be paid, right? And so it highlighted a real problem.
Yeah. The public, actually, when the public found that out, they were shocked
Right.
too, because they also just assumed, wait, these first responders, they're doing their job. Wait, why would the system not pay them? And that's when it was like the law was, that's when y'all explained to me the law was needed to be changed. It was inadequate.
right. And like, if you unfortunately were chasing a bad guy and got shot and you missed, 2 or 3 months of work, okay, you get paid while you're out and then you go back to work. When you broke your leg a couple of years before, you're out of work for a while, you get paid and then you go back to work. But all of a sudden now you've got, a mental injury, right? You've got PTSD diagnosed by their doctor who they send you to. And the doctor says, okay, this is a legitimate injury caused by your job. You are now unable to work. Okay. But, oh, so sorry. Now you're not getting paid.
Right. And
That's kind of changed.
The only ones who knew that were y'all, and
Well,
so that,
and that brings up the point, Gerry, and sort of moving the discussion along, right? Once that happened, I know that Jessica was outraged. I mean, just like you were, not understanding this. I know she did reach out to a number of other law firms for assistance and was rejected. I think everybody told her that there was not a case, because there wasn't a physical injury, which is sort of a technical legal problem, right? But I remember vividly meeting with you and Jessica. You came into the office. I don't even know if you remember this, because you really didn't say much of anything in that initial meeting. You kind of sat there. I mean, I remember this vividly because I remember you and how impacted you were. But Jessica was telling me of the whole situation, and I said, well, the law technically does not protect you right now. But your case, I think your case could be a test case that could challenge this law, right? And that we could potentially make new law, or even, it's conceivable that we could affect change legislatively. Do you have any recollection of that discussion at all, or is it still kind of just a blur for you?
I mean, I imagined, as you said, that it would have to change because I wasn't going to be the last.
Right. Well, yeah, you weren't, and not only were you not the last, you were the first of a number of Pulse responders.
I'm just probably decades before me. Other first responders have been through other very traumatic things, and I'm like, wow, this whole time, and like everyone just assumed, no, it's covered. I was like, no. So as it became a statewide discussion, everybody started realizing, how is it not covered? That's from the public's perspective, but from a personal perspective, I was like, this has to change, and I could only hope to help. I just didn't realize my case would be the main case and focus for legislation, but I was suffering and going through a lot. So it was hard to imagine. You got my symptoms, I got financial stress, and I still had, our kids were really young. They were my number one focus, really. And I wanted to really be better for them because I still had to take care of them and be dad and not affect them at all. So, but yeah.
Well, it's a funny thing, Gerry. I mean, I keep a journal, and I just happened to, as we were talking about doing this, PTSD, these segments related to PTSD, went back and looked at my old journals, and I have a journal entry from the day that I met with you and Jessica, actually. It's handwritten discussion and thinking in my own head that this is so obviously wrong, and it's been a problem in our system for years. And my thought process then, as I wrote down my journal entry, was that, your case could be the one that would actually change the law. And of course, that's what ultimately ended up happening. So, it's a very complicated, long story, both from a personal perspective, your perspective, but also from a legal perspective. And I think that's why Paolo and I thought it was important to, have you to be part of this discussion as we're doing, this series on post-traumatic stress disorder and mental nervous injuries in this community.
Yeah, it was for me, much longer, but I just say it was a long, hard fight that involved a lot of entities, spearheaded Jess and other first responders.
Right.
And yeah, it took a lot, but you know what? It was historical because it was unanimous, right? In fact, I remember other states from their governor's office tried to get a hold of us, Jessica, saying, that's historic. We want to adopt that in our state too. How did you do that? Because, the legislative.
Right.
I didn't know anything about it, really. I didn't know you had to go through. So there's a House side, the Senate side. You had to go through 3 subcommittees for it to even reach the floor to be voted. This is why,
right.
Jessica was in Tallahassee a few times, going door to door at different politicians' offices.
Sure.
Basically, hey. Yeah. But yeah.
Yeah, and I was with her up there, many times. I know you were up there too for some of those committee hearings.
Yeah, Jess and you. I mean, y'all were more active. I only had to appear when I had to, maybe. Otherwise, I stayed at the hotel. Sometimes we brought our dog. Yeah, sometimes we brought our dog to keep me company, and that's how I spent my time in Tallahassee.
Right. Yeah. I remember that and appreciate it, Gerry. I mean, it was a very continuing difficult time for you. You're still fighting, this fight. You're not getting paid. The pension benefits, hadn't been granted yet, I don't believe. So you had all of the financial stress piling on top of this. I mean, it was really, it was historic, I have to say. And certainly there were a lot of other states that fell in line with Florida after we passed our law here
Yeah,
in 2018.
I think y'all's blueprint and the blueprint, of how you, Jessica, what happened to get it done. The states kind of just,
Right.
uh, I, I felt they wanted that blueprint and they tried to copy that to in-state to get the same kind of wage benefits, full benefits for first responders in their states. But it's good
Yeah. And so,
here.
and so, as a result, obviously, Gerry, from your case, right? I mean, that was the case. Now, after Pulse and after your claim and the work, that was done in the legislative process, right? The statute got amended. So now folks in your position are entitled to get lost wages for these kinds of injuries, right? I mean, you were sort of, the guinea pig, right? The fulcrum, right? To become that change, now, and let's kind of fast forward a little bit, right? Since 2018, the law has changed. You've lived your life, your kids are getting older, but I know personally firsthand, both you and Jessica, are still advocates, right, for first responders and mental health and PTSD. Have you noticed or seen any shift in that culture from, pre-Pulse, when you were talking about, nobody wanted to talk about it. We didn't talk about it. We just went back to work. Have you seen that momentum move? And if so, how much? And just, give us a little bit of your thoughts on that, in the last,
Yeah.
5,
So
6 years.
like you said, when the law changed, right? One, it wasn't retroactive, didn't apply to me, but I was proud.
Right.
I was proud that from that moment on that it passed, and I was at the bill signing. I got a copy of the bill, official, from then Governor Rick Scott, right? And Attorney General Pam Bondi was there. I have that copy.
Right.
I was proud from that moment on into the future it would help first responders not go into this problem that I did financially or as far as not being. But let me tell you, from all of that, the awareness level, it went through the roof. There was no denying PTSD existed, but support.
In theory.
Yeah, in theory, support. It is different from agency to agency. Some better, some worse. But by then I'd been contacted, sometimes through your office, sometimes through my wife, trying to get a hold of me, asking me for help, or just telling me that I was their hero, right? And thanking me for my bravery because we'd given them a voice. I gave them a voice that they wish they had before, but they're happy they have now. Moving into the future, this was huge. And so all these first responders from all over, some of it helped, it benefited them. Some of them were still getting the same no help, blanket support, no direction, and some were getting it worse. And I can't say worse. It sounded worse, but it may have just been bad all along at their agency, right? And I tried to help and guide it. I tried to. So the law changed, but I believe that for some that the system hardened it for. So it still needs to. I think that it needs another amendment to not be as strict. Yeah, wage.
Well, and I think it highlights that we still, although we've come some distance, right? There's still a gap, right? And there's still some way for us to still go, right?
Oh, well, yes, for sure.
And we've kept in touch, obviously, all over the years, Gerry, and I'd love our chances to chat and talk to each other and stuff. And you tell me about some of your advocacy. But for the folks listening, give us a little bit of insight, as to what kind of things you're working on now and folks that you talk to and how you're still sort of advocating for this movement, you and Jessica.
Oh, I mean, if a first responder contacts me, you know, whether they just want to, that they'll tell me what they're going through, I try to listen, try to guide them. I explain to them. Well, one, I was like, listen, for me, I early days paddleboarding saltwater around the saltwater islands here. I mean, that helped. Water is healing therapy. I had to have it between, my family, my doctor, therapist, and my own faith. I pulled through, but you got to have something, a hobby unrelated to the job. Have that hobby.
Right.
And I tell them, and anyone listening, have that hobby. Nature really is. I mentioned my doctor, therapist. I have that, but someone listening or others may not. So my message there or response there is don't rely on your agency to get you your doctor or therapist, right? Or to heal you. No one at the agency is a doctor. They're not going to do surgery on your knee. They're not going to give you the proper medication. No, don't rely on free services that they somehow found and got a hold of. Rely on the mechanism that is there and get, it's like buying a house. What do you know about real estate laws? No, I'm going to hire a real estate agent. So in this case, get a workers' comp attorney who will get you your doctor, your therapist, and then make sure that your wages remain the same. Now, when you're injured and out, you can't work overtime. You still got copays. There are still things. Don't
Right.
don't rely on your agency or some policy plan to take all those things.
So Gerry, I guess just in closing, I just, as from a personal standpoint, not just a professional standpoint, thank you for, I guess, just your courage, your service, your willingness to talk. I mean, you and I have had a lot of private conversations, over the years, but this is kind of the first time where you felt comfortable enough to talk about this publicly. And I'm very grateful, and I appreciate you wanting to do that. Your story, has given countless first responders, the strength and the courage to speak up, and I just appreciate that and all that you've done for that community, and so for our listeners, if you're listening and you're a first responder, or you're a family member or you're a friend, and if you found this information helpful, and if you found Gerry's story helpful, please tell a friend, tell a colleague, be sure to like and subscribe to our podcast, right? Following us on Instagram and Facebook, Twitter at Bickler Law. You can reach out to us at info@BicklerLaw. We've got tons of resources on our website, bicklerlaw.com. Again, thank you, Gerry, for spending some time with us, for talking about your story. I know it was a lot, and Geoff and I are very grateful. Thanks to everybody for listening, and stay safe.
Thanks, Gerry. Appreciate you very much. All right.
Thanks for listening to Shielded. At Bickler & Longo, this is what we do. We've represented thousands of first responders across the state of Florida. If you need assistance, don't wait. Please reach out. To learn more, head over to bicklerlaw.com or email us at info@bicklerlaw.com. You can also follow us on Facebook and Instagram at Bickler Law. And if you found today's episode to be helpful, please share it with a fellow first responder who might need to hear it. Until next time, stay safe, and thank you for all you do.